G'day gymnastic skill seekers, and welcome back to another training vlog. This is going to be day 4 of my current training phase, and on this day it's a Sunday, and on Sundays I like to just focus on pure flexibility. So flexibility is one of my biggest weaknesses that's holding me back from a lot of my gymnastics goals. I think that comes from years of not training flexibility, competing in triathlons, marathons, Ironmans, doing all the endurance sports, then moving into sort of strength and conditioning, more of CrossFit, a lot of that sort of stuff, and yeah, just ignoring the flexibility side. And it wasn't until I started doing more gymnastic strength training, more handstands, more press to handstands, more work on the rings, that I realized that my flexibility was letting me down. I might have had the strength to muscle my way through a lot of gymnastics, but the aesthetics of my gymnastics wasn't very good. So I've been working with Erdy at Learning to Human, so check him out if you don't follow him already. He's been helping me with my mobility phase, and we're probably on about phase 12 that I've been working with him. And it's been a long journey. It's a slow journey, but flexibility is like building strength. It takes time, and that's why I dedicate a full day on Sundays just to pure flexibility training. So let's get stuck in. On Sundays, I usually do a little bit of work around the house as well. So I'm in the process of building a dog yard for little Sky. So when she goes on heat, we can lock her up. But also just during the day, it helps to have somewhere to keep her if we have to go out and stuff like that. So need to build a gate. So just busy sanding some planks and getting ready to paint them and getting ready to put together a gate. I'll keep you posted on how that goes. Okay, so it's Sunday. On Sundays, I like to do my longer stretching session. So this will be probably about 45 minutes to an hour of just purely working on improving flexibility. Here goes. Started with some elephant walks, and that's just to try and stretch out the hamstrings a little bit, increase that posterior chain mobility. I love using bent knee to straight leg stretches. It's good for the anterior pelvic tilt, but it also just lets you get a little bit more core compression going on as well. Okay, so then moving into the leg swings, so using 2 kilogram weights on each foot. And starting off with sort of front scales, so it's just raising the leg, keeping it straight, trying to keep the standing leg straight as well, and that little pause at the top of each repetition. Definitely feel a little bit stronger on the left side than I do on the right, but hopefully that can come up if I keep practicing these. Side scales, so again, trying to keep the standing leg straight, abducting the leg out to the side. This carries over to our straddles and our pancake, obviously. And then a little bit of back scale. This is just a good way to sort of get the glute active and to work on keeping those quads straight and that leg straight in a little bit of hip extension. Also prepping for the front splits, stretching and stuff that will come in this day. Now you'll notice when I work through this day, a lot of these stretches are actually stretches I'm working on in earlier sessions, in session 1, 2, and 3 earlier in the week. So earlier in the week, I'm using maybe 4 exercises at the start of every session in terms of flexibility, and then moving into my gymnastic strength training. And then on this day, it's just pure flexibility, but it's repeating a lot of the stuff I've already done. I think sometimes we try to expose ourselves to a variety, constantly varying the program, but I think, we need to spend more time just focusing on where we're at, more time on the specifics, just working on trying to improve, the stretches that we are working on, the strength exercises that we are working on. We want to be able to expose the body enough to a certain movement to get an adaptation from it. And if you're just doing it once or twice and you're not sticking to a program, well, then you're going to see minimal progress. You might progress quickly at the start, but as the journey goes on, your progress will definitely start to slow down. So I recommend that you're spending a good 6 weeks working the same movements and doing them more than once a week if that's the primary goal. So for me, flexibility is a primary goal, and hence I'm doing it multiple times a week. Okay, so we move into a Piriformis Stretch. So I'm actually just doing this as an A1, and I'm doing 3 rounds of this. It's spending sort of 45 seconds just hunting around, trying to find a good stretch in that sort of outer hip. I've had sort of tight glutes. I think years of squatting and years of strengthening the glutes and not mobilizing, not doing a lot of hip external rotation, a lot of pigeon sort of position or this piriformis stretch. So just spending time stretching that out. This is obviously going to be able to help any forward folds, any pike stretching, any pancake stretching. You want to have the glutes nice and flexible. So after 3 rounds of that, I'm just adding in a standing calf stretch. Now, my coach hasn't programmed this, but I find that if I go into head to toe or a lot of pike stretching, I feel it a lot in my calves. So my calves are pretty tight right now. And maybe that's come from years of running when I used to compete in triathlons. So if I stretch out the calves just a little bit before I move into pike stretching, it helps me release the calf and then get a better stretch in the hamstring or better stretch in the posterior chain somewhere else. So it's like layers. We want to try to release the tight layers so we can get to the deeper layers. And for me, it's the calf muscle. So I just spent a bit of time stretching out the calf with this sort of foot elevated, sort of head to target is what I'm working on there. Okay, so back to the stretching program. It's got me working on this seated single leg knee extension. I think this is a really good exercise if you struggle to push the back of your knees flat into the floor with your pancake or with your pike. So failing to get good knee extension there. It's going to help to build strength in the quads for that knee extension. I'm also crushing a yoga block. So the yoga block goes between the stomach and the thigh, and this is helping with core compression. So as I extend that leg, I'm also trying to push my chest into my thigh and crush that yoga block as much as I can so I get better core compression. Obviously, it's a bit of a stretch on the hamstring as well, the posterior chain, but I'd say the main focus is building strength in the anterior chain with this exercise. I noticed that my left is probably a little bit better than my right. So yeah, just need to work a little bit more on that right side. I think it's probably hamstring tightness on the right side. So a little bit of imbalance there. Next, I move to the head to toe stretch. This has been in my program for months, probably even close to 6 months. And I'm making slow progress in this, but I'm definitely making progress. It's a long journey, but it's definitely feeling a lot better. Head to toe used to make me feel pretty sick. I was like, oh, not head to toe, but I'm actually starting to enjoy it a little bit now. So right now I'm locking the index finger around the base of the big toe. Probably start the first set touching the top of the thumb, head to thumb, and then I can sort of bend the thumb and go to sort of the knuckle there once I warm up into multiple sets. I like to take my time getting into this, so I just sort of set myself up and try to close the angle between my stomach and my thighs, hang out in that stretch, try to pull the hip into the hip capsule, so I'm sort of like sucking in to get the hip flexors to be active. So think about the femur bone and the hip, trying to draw it up into that capsule as I go into that forward flexion. And then just working on slow pulses and focusing more on trying to contract the hip flexors and pull myself into each pulse, not just bounce in and out uncontrolled. So it's 35 reps that I'm doing in the pulse, and then it's like a 15-second hold. So that's making good progress. I'm enjoying that now. It's not as painful as it once was, and hopefully the head to toe will get better. Will eventually touch my head to my toe. It's going to happen. Okay, just a quick view of the gym. So we actually built this shed, owner builder. So that took a little while. I was lucky to have my in-laws come and give me a hand with this, and my partner. She's handy on the tools as well. So we put together the shed, and then just a bit of a view outdoors, and you'll see that this is Julatten. Welcome to Julatten. We're in northern Queensland. It's a nice part of the world, and we're on about 5 acres. So it's a good little property that we have. We quite enjoy being here. Okay, back to the session. These are the C's. So I'm working on a seated straddle leg lifts. I like to sit on a yoga block just on the edge and then use it to help tilt the pelvis forward. So it's just helping me sort of get more of an anterior pelvic tilt here. I also start this just by stretching. So I'm just twisting the torso to one side and just trying to get a little bit more flexibility in the posterior chain before I start to contract the anterior chain here. So just hang out a little bit there, get a bit of a stretch, then pushing the hands into the floor, trying to lock the elbows, and then focusing on, again, drawing the hip into the hip capsule, and then trying to lift the leg up and hold for 2 seconds, then taking it back down. Focusing hard on contracting the quads and trying to keep the knee locked. These have come a long way. My legs my hip flexors are getting stronger, and I can start to lift a little bit higher. I'm also really trying to push into the floor. If I can push down into the floor and not allow the torso to lean back, I'm getting more core contraction, more core compression there, which is what we want. A common mistake here is to lean back and use gravity, I suppose, or use the assistance of leaning back to lift the leg higher, you're actually better off to lean forward, push into the ground, and just get a small leg lift than you are to lean back, because it'll help isolate the hip flexors and build the strength there. So just be careful of that if you're training that. After I've done the leg lifts, I'm going to move straight into like a weighted pancake stretch. So I'm using about 15 kilos right now, sort of place that on my back and then slowly work my way down into the bottom of the pancake stretch. I might move the torso from side to side. I might internally rotate the hip and then externally rotate the hip. I might plantar flex and then dorsiflex the ankles, just using every trick in the book to try and allow myself to get a little bit deeper in that pancake position. In this phase, I've really noticed a change. I'm actually starting to get further down towards the floor, and my pelvis is actually starting to get more anterior pelvic tilt. Like I feel like I've crossed over sitting on the hip bone, and now I'm actually leaning forward on the hip bone. It's the first time I've sort of felt that. Erdy says to be careful now, like you get into this range and you can really start to push yourself to go deeper. You're fighting to get that chest to the floor or that nose to the floor, and you can just sometimes go a little bit too hard. He said that he injured himself when he got to this point, so just play it safe, work those ranges, be comfortable in the stretch, hanging out here for 45 seconds, and like I said, just playing with side to side motion, hip internal, external rotation, ankle dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, and just trying to relax and sink deep into that pancake. Definitely feel I'm making progress with this. It's getting better. There's still a ways to go though. So there's 3 rounds of that, 3 rounds of the leg lifts and the seated pancake stretch. And finally, I'm finishing up with front splits. I'm working on an assisted glute lift. So just using the P-bars here to offer a little bit of assistance, walking the back foot back, so being in this sort of like front splits position, and working on the hip extension. Now, when we do this, we want to focus on not moving the torso up. So my head shouldn't lift up as I start to extend the back leg. We're trying to think about lengthening here. If anything, when I lengthen, I should sink down, not move up. So I like to try and focus on pushing the rear heel away from the body. Can I make that back leg longer, which will help with the hip extension and really target that hip flexor? So that's the goal, and trying not to rise up there. We're just doing reps of this, about 8 reps on each leg, and every time I extend that back leg, we're trying to hold for around about 3 seconds. The assistance here, just me using those P-bars and supporting a little bit of my weight, allows me to sink deeper. If I didn't have the assistance, I'd have to work on balance a little bit more, but also I would be taking more of my body weight, so I probably wouldn't go as low here. So this is just a good way to progress the range of motion in the front splits. I'm supersetting this with Gymnastics Bridge. So in this phase, it's working on Gymnastics Bridge push-ups and an isometric hold. So I'm doing 6 push-ups and then I'm holding for roughly 20 seconds. Right now I'm on the highest setting of the Reebok step, and I've got a 20 kilo weight plate on top of that. I find in the first set, it's all in my wrists. So just that wrist extension, I come out of that first set, I'm just like, oh, my forearms, they're just pumping. But after that first set, that sort of goes away. And then it's just really working on trying to get more thoracic extension there. So as I push up, I'm trying to straighten those legs. So glutes are contracted hard, and then I'm trying to lock the knees by contracting the quads and trying to move those shoulders forward. So we want to be able to see that those shoulders are vertically stacked above the wrists before I go any lower in terms of the feet elevation. So just keep working at this height, keep trying to push those shoulders over the wrists, improve thoracic extension, and obviously the shoulder mobility there as well. I think Erdy's done really well with the design of this program, because you wouldn't want to do the front splits and the Gymnastics Bridge stuff before you did the pancake stuff. We're stretching out the hip flexors here in this final superset, and then in the pancake and in the leg lifts, I'm contracting and shortening the hip flexors. So it's better to do that stuff before we think about stretching out the hip flexors. And then obviously the Piriformis Stretch and the knee extensions and head to toe, having them first is that going to assist my mobility in the pancake. So the program's very well written. I appreciate Erdy putting this together for me. And like I said, if you haven't seen At Learning to Human, you should check him out. If you're looking for mobility coaching or some gymnastic strength training, he's a coach that you can definitely work with. I also too offer coaching, so if you want to work with me too, I can also help you with your gymnastic strength and flexibility training as well. So just sort of throw that in there. But anyway, that's my mobility day for Sundays. That's what I'm working on. So every Sunday, that could be anywhere from 45 to 60 minutes. Depends how quickly I work through that session. Sometimes I might add in another set or another rep, or I might add in some other stretching depending on how I'm feeling. And I think that's an important thing to note, that during these stretches, I'm always trying to think about, okay, where am I feeling the tightness? Okay, what's happening in the head to toe? What's happening in the pancake? Is there something I can do to stretch out that layer and then move into a deeper layer that's going to help me progress further into the pancake or into the front splits or into the bridge? Just play around with it, explore it. I don't think there's any right and wrong here. Yeah, there's a perfect form and we want to work towards aesthetically pleasing movements. But at the same time, why not do some research? Why not see what happens if you rotate the hip this way? Why not see what happens if you contract the knee, contract the quad, contract the glute? Explore the movement and find what helps you to get into a deeper stretch. Like I was saying with the pancake, it's side to side motion, hip internal, external rotation, the ankle movement. All this sort of stuff is just stuff that's going to help me progress here. It also allows me to report back to my coach and tell him, look, right now in the head to toe, I'm feeling it in my calves. We've got to do something about releasing the calf so I can go deeper into the head to toe. And that's one of the things I love about the gymnastics, strength and mobility stuff is just the body awareness. Like, you really have to be in tune with your body. And the more you can sort of focus on, what muscles are working, what positions you need to be in, what the weakest link is, I think the faster you'll progress with this. And I never really got that from, standard weights training. So I'm doing squats and doing deadlifts and stuff like that. Yeah, I got strong, but I never really had the same connection with my body and what was going on there. So that's one of the reasons I really enjoy this style of training. Anyway, I hope you found this vlog useful. If you've got any questions about my training, any comments, feel free to leave them below and I'll get back to you. If not, happy Sunday, happy training.